Can keep my hands on myself. Pick out dust them off, put them back up on the shelf. Kiss my little baby girl is in need. Am I coming out of left field? Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Got another mouth to feed. Leave it with the babies till the mama call the grave digger. Gone with the falling leaves. Am I coming out of left field? Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might have had your fill, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, I feel it still. We could fight a war for peace.
Hi, you are at home with Mrs. Honkin today. Today we are going to work on something called tessellations. Tessellations is a type of artwork that is like tiling when you cover an entire surface with a certain shape and there's no overlapping and there's no little spaces in between. So what you're going to need is the following. Get yourself a pencil. Sharpie is very helpful. Scissors. Some kind of tape. Scotch tape works good, but I didn't have that, so I'm using masking. And then you're going to want some kind of a paper or a thick paper that's a little bit durable. And what I did is I took a box out of the recycling box, like Manila wafers, and I used that because it's a little bit thinner than cardboard, and that seems to work really well for this. All right, so go get your supplies and meet me back here. Tessellation is a process of tiling things together so that they don't overlap and that there are no spaces in between. In the video, you saw that there are 3 different types: square, triangle, and hexagon. So we're going to start with squares first. So these are some patterns that I made: the giraffe, fox, and a fish, and all of them can be made by starting basically with a square. Now I suggest that you cut out some squares from maybe something a little thicker than paper. This is a leftover container that had pop cans in it, so it's not quite as thick as cardboard. But what you're going to want to do is measure. These squares are 3 inches by 3 inches. So all I did was take my ruler, and here will be my edge. So 1, 2, 3 inches. Now that's my nice straight edge I'm following. So I go 3 inches. Now I'm going to go across from it and make that same measurement so that I know that my line is straight. Okay, there's that. Now, 3 inches, I'm going to make a line this way. And then all I have to do is basically cut that square out. Now, you might want to make yourself more than 1 square like I did, because that way, in case you make a mistake, or if you decide to do more than 1 animal, you will have extras. So there's my 1 square, and I'm all ready to go. Now, I'm going to do it on white squares when I demonstrate, because I want you to be able to see this a little more clearly, okay? So let's go ahead, and I'm going to start with one of my simplest ones, and that is the fox. Okay, the fox only requires me to take pieces off from one side. Before we get started, I'm going to do something. I'm going to label A, B, A, B. See how the A's are across from each other and the B's are across from each other? That helps you to know where to place things, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I am going to just draw a line right here, a little triangle off the side. Same thing, I want to try and make it about the same on the other side. So when I cut this off the bottom, it goes to the top because whatever you take off from an A goes to the other A. If I took something off from this side, it would go to this side. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut those triangles off just like so. Okay. And then get your tape. I find that Scotch tape works best, but you know what? I was out of it, so I had to use masking tape. So I'm going to put a little bit on that side and a little bit on that side. And then, so now what happens is I cut this off from the bottom, so I'm going to attach it to the top. You want to make sure that it lines up. I'm going to do the same thing. This goes from the bottom to the top. Alrighty. Oh, I have a little extra tape left over. There we go. So now, basically that's how I got my box, and then I decided to add the little facial features like so. Now, if you try this on your own doing a different animal, sometimes people like to make tessellations and they do not have to look like an animal specifically. Sometimes they're just fun shapes. So, there's our little wolf. Or I should say, I'm sorry, a fox. Could be a wolf. And his ears. Okay. I did a little better on that one. Sorry, it looks kind of rushed. Let's try the giraffe, okay? The giraffe started as an accident on my part. I was just kind of messing around. First we want to label it. A, B, A, B. A's are across from each other, B's are across from each other. What happened is I just decided to make this shape on the bottom, and it looked something like this. I started on one side and I went up and I had these funny little horns, and then I came down and I went back up, and then I came back down, and I went all the way from one side to the other. That was the first thing that I did. So whenever you cut something off from A, you stick it to another A. So I'm cutting it off the bottom. Okay, so I cut it off from the bottom, so I'm going to attach it to the top. The A's stay together. Again, I'll get my tape. And there we go. You want to try really hard to make sure that the sides line up. That's how you get that nice tiling effect where there are no overlaps or spaces. Okay, so then what I did is I took a piece off from the side B and put it over here. I just drew a line, kind of like, oops, I'm trying to remember here. Good thing I have an eraser. Kind of like that. So this piece is a B, and it goes with a B. So when you go from this side, you put it on this side. So let's cut it off. All right, so I cut it and it goes from one side to the other, and I need to tape it on. This one's a little trickier, so if you're having a hard time with this one, try the fox one first. Okay, it's taped on. I don't want this, so I'm just gonna trim that off. The tape overlaps. All right, so that's how I came up with my giraffe. And I just wanted to give him some fun giraffe eyes, because giraffes have such large eyes. And then, of course, they have nostrils. And we wouldn't have a giraffe without the giraffe spots. Okay, so that's the giraffe. Now, I'll show you how to do a fish. The fish is a little easier than our friend the giraffe. So let's go A, B, A, B. Remember, whatever you take off A goes to A. Whatever comes from B goes to B. So I am going to take a triangle off here and another one here. So when I cut these off, they went on side B, so they will come over to the other side B. Here we go. Okay, once they're cut off, remember they're going to go from this side over here. Try to line up those edges. And then I'm going to line up the other one. And there we go. That is his tail. Now, there's one more piece. That one right there. I'm going to go up, and then I'm going to come down all the way to that little corner there. And that piece is A, so it will come up here to A. So basically, whenever you cut something off, it goes to the opposite side, right up there. And tape them together. And there's my little fish. And then, of course, you can add some of your details. I'll give him some fun googly eyes, maybe a little reflection, gills, a nice fin to help propel him, the fin on top, and the tail, of course. So once you have made your pattern, then it's time to get your paper. So all I'm going to do is take my fish and I'm going to line him up. See that nice straight edge? I can line it up right against the edge, and then I'm going to trace around him, because you have to start somewhere. And this is where having a stiffer piece is helpful, because paper wants to curl up on you when you trace it, but the other paper that's thicker will not. So I pick him up, and there's my first fish. Now, because this is a tiling piece, it should fit right in, just like so. And then I'm going to trace around it. And you have to be holding it down, otherwise it likes to move around. And then I'll pick it up and I'll trace it again. Basically, you are just going to keep on doing this until you have filled up your entire page and you have nowhere else to put a fish. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to add the parts that make it look like a fish. Some of those details like the eyes, the gills, and the textures on them. So for example, this is my fish. I would put his eye, his lid, there's his inside of his eye, a big mouth with a smile, gills, some kind of a fin, and then your tail is back here, so I'm going to give it a little bit of texture, okay? Then right underneath it, this time you see this fin. And then you do the eye, and the pupil, the mouth. Notice I'm not making a lot of teeny tiny intricate details because you're going to have to do this on every single fish. So you want to do something that you can keep going all the way across. So that's what we're going to do next, is add those details. All right, so now that I have all of the pencil drawing finished, all the way from one side to the other, now it's time to add some color. Now, as you may have noticed, my giraffes are not all the same color, and my foxes are not all the same color, but you'll notice there is a pattern about how I colored them. I did the fuchsia, tan, yellow, orange, fuchsia, tan, yellow, orange, and so on, so that there is a pattern. Or on my giraffe, every other one was gray, yellow, gray, yellow, gray, yellow. So you don't have to do these all the same color, but you do want to pick some sort of a pattern so that when you do it, it will look like it's repeating, because that's the point of a tessellation. Also, it's handy to outline with a Sharpie before you add your color. Now you can add your color with marker or colored pencil. I did both. I used marker to color in my giraffes, and I used colored pencil to color in my fox. So that is completely up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and add my Sharpie lines. I'm going to color the eye in. And then the great part about using a Sharpie is when I go over this with marker or colored pencil, the beauty is it will not smear my Sharpie. These black lines will stay put. Now, you might want to consider putting something under it, because look, it is starting to go through my page just a little bit, and we don't want to ruin mom or dad's counter or whatever it's on. All right, so let's go ahead and add the Sharpie and our colors. All right, so I have finished it. Now, I have to tell you, there are a couple mistakes on here. One of them is, one of these fish does not have gills and that side fin. So when you're watching this, if you know which one, you can let me know if you found it when you send me your picture. Another thing for you to keep in mind is this takes a while. And so if you want to break this project up into 2 or even 3 lessons, you could. One lesson could just be making and coming up with your template that you make from the squares. Your second day could be tracing and adding the details. And then your third time could be the coloring portion. Sometimes if we break it down into little bites, it's a lot easier to finish. Well, I hope you had fun making a tessellation with me today. Now that you've done it once, you can experiment with different shapes and trying to make different types of tiling, or you can show it to someone else. Well, that's all we have for today, so I'll see you next time here at Home with Mrs. Hocken.